Welcome back to the Backmarkers. My name is Mike Hurley, and I am joined by Austin Evans. Hi, Austin.
Hello, hello. What interesting environments we have now
Yep.
found ourselves in.
Well, you're in a new environment. So for people that aren't
I
watching the
am.
video, you're recording from your studio for the first time.
Yes. So obviously last year when we were doing every single episode, I had to have the home setup, right? Like I
Yep.
was not going to come to the office at 5 a.m. after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix or something. But now that we're actually setting our own schedule, I get to use all of our fancy studio lighting, and you get to help me set up all the back end stuff and make sure it works before we hit the record button.
Yeah, we had
Yay!
quite a few listeners reach out and ask us throughout parts of the season where our episodes were, which was very funny to me because my response was always, you clearly have not listened to the episode we made where we told you that we would be recording on an ad hoc schedule. And I will say, I have been able to enjoy the racing for what it is more this year because we haven't had to be like super focused on like where I'm gonna be. So like I'm getting ready to go to California next week, and there's gonna be a race
Ooh.
when I wake up early in the morning. But I don't have to worry about making sure that I've got OBS installed on my MacBook Pro to record with you straight away. So, but I'm enjoying the season for what it is, and that's what we're going to talk about in the episode today. I wanted to get your thoughts on the season, and then I want to kind of review at this point how we think the teams and drivers are going, and we will pick it up again later on at different points of the season. I think it might be a fun way to do these more sporadic episodes that we're doing this year. So we
Yeah.
are, I mean, honestly, how many races has it even been? I know there was meant to be more than there has been, but we're
I
like
think technically
four?
five, four, five. I think we were supposed to
Five.
be.
Five.
Yes.
Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Australia, Azerbaijan, Miami.
Yeah. And then Monaco will be, as of recording the podcast,
Next.
this weekend.
Yep. So 5 races into what was a 23, now probably 22 race calendar. What is your feeling so far about the season?
I mean, I think the big splashy headline is, of course, Red Bull have just completely walked away from everyone. I mean, I think it's a very clear that they got this thing. I mean, we're 5 races in, and it would take something very shocking for Max and Checo to not just completely walk away with it. Like, I think at this point, it's almost a foregone conclusion that their car has just I think we're smart because at this point, when you look at, the big three teams and technically big four now that Aston has kind of made such a big leap, it's clear that all three, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, were pretty much just carrying over their 2022 cars and just sort of further refining their concepts. And what we've seen is that, Ferrari took a step. Mercedes are, I mean, obviously we've seen for this weekend's race.
They're
For the
about
first
to
time
take
we're
a
going to
step.
see their proper. Yeah. But they had tried to persevere with the zero side pod concept. And then we've got Red Bull, who have just been absolute machines and just refined and turned what was already the best car even better. So it's interesting because it does feel like it's sort of like we had some interesting trajectories at the end of last year. It wasn't quite just Red Bull absolutely walking away with it. There's a little bit of like glimmers of hope for Mercedes. But then you gave them the offseason. They comes back and go, oh, by the way, yeah, our car that was really great, it's even faster now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of where I am with it too, where I've just accepted the Red Bull dominance, and it's not really what I'm focused on now. Like, I have like a couple of things that I'm really interested in, because so far I feel like it's been pretty fair to say Red Bull is dominant. Max, not completely. Like, he most of the time is running away with it, but Sergio, I think he's pulling out to be. I mean, we're only a few races in, right? We have so many more to go. It is not impossible to imagine Sergio actually mounting a challenge against Max Verstappen. I feel like at this point they seem to be, in certain tracks, pretty evenly matched or otherwise. Like when it comes to street circuits. So I'm intrigued for this weekend in Monaco. Sergio shows what he's really good at,
year.
right? Yes, exactly. And so that's an intriguing thing to me. In the time that I've been watching the sport, no Red Bull teammate has been able to come close to Max, and I think Sergio has. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail in a little bit. I think, so for me, what I'm really interested in is the kind of the middle section of the races right now. Like what is, I say middle, but it's like what is like 2 to 6 and what's going on there. Like that has been really interesting to me. Having Aston do what they've done this year is very
Amazing.
intriguing. very intriguing, and I remain cautiously optimistic about what their future might hold. So like they just announced Honda, right, as their new engine
Yes.
supplier from 2026, because 2026 is when the next revisions are going to happen. The new rules, the new regulations, and a lot of it is around engines. I actually didn't know this, but I think sooner than that, if not already, like coming up very quickly, there are going to be cost caps for engine supply as well. Did you know that?
Yeah, so I'm not. I've heard bits and pieces. I don't know the exact details. I know that they are slowly phasing in cost caps in as many areas as they can. Although I think the one thing that has still been carved out are those sort of like the driver salaries, or your handful of most paid employees. It's interesting to see. I think Aston are absolutely the only reason why 2023 is not a snooze fest. Like I just like the fact that they have come up in such a big way. Talk about a redemption arc for Fernando, absolutely crushing it. Third, fourth, third. Like it just absolutely just destroying it. And just so consistent, so on top of it. And I completely believe that if they keep up this sort of run of form, that all it takes is a little tangle, something to go wrong with Red Bull, whatever. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of races there. I'm personally like, man, Fernando wins a race this year, I will be so
I
about it.
think it's
Like
going to happen.
this year, so kind of going back to your point earlier about how it's our experience watching this season has been a little different, where we're not doing that sort of initial like sort of reaction after every single race, and I think for me it's allowed me to kind of settle in a little bit and actually kind of pick sides. Last year I felt like I had to be so neutral. I had to be like, oh,
You were the
everyone's fair.
Switzerland of Formula One last year.
I was the Sauber Grand Prix of
Hmm.
Formula One. Wait, no, that's probably not a great analogy. Yeah, but this year I think I've picked my sides, and I am firmly on two drivers' camps this year, both of which I am rooting to do something. Fernando is just, I mean, he's an absolute just, force of nature, and I'm out here for Yuki. I've decided that Yuki, this is the year
Huh.
I'm supporting my boy. I want Yuki to do well. He is coming into the season with such a massive chip on his shoulder. I mean, obviously the De Vries situation last year where he had that one stand-in race with Williams, got points. I mean, I think at that point he was the flavor of the month. Everyone wanted to sort of have Nick on their team. And you think about Yuki, who had two promising but less than spectacular years at AlphaTauri. There was an enormous amount of pressure, right? Like it was one thing to go against, Pierre, who is an established, very, very quick racer, but you have Nick coming in, and at the beginning of the season, I was worried. Like if he did not absolutely destroy Nick, he was probably not going to have a drive. That was just kind of the way it felt. And he has done exactly that. He has absolutely just made Nick DeVries look like a amateur, which is impressive for a dude who has a CV like winning Formula 2 and Formula E, and he's been around for so many years. So for me, those are kind of like some of the biggest sort of stories of this of the season. It's like Red Bull, yeah, okay. I would love to see Checo win. I would love to see Checo, making an actual fight with Max. I don't ultimately think he'll be able to sustain a title challenge for that long, but I'm hoping. But for me, it's all about like I want to see Fernando win a race. I want to see Yuki try to score points in what is clearly one of the worst cars on the grid, and just see like what the just constant nonsense is with Ferrari and with Mercedes. There's so much to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, I've been a little underwhelmed so far this season because of the gaps in the calendar.
Yeah.
Like that there were some
Yeah.
gaps that occurred. I think the first one was because there was no China Grand Prix, so that caused the gap. But it feels like we still haven't actually gotten started. And then this was supposed to be the time, right? 3 races back to back, but unfortunately because of the absolutely horrific flooding going on in the Imola region, they had to cancel the Grand Prix, which is 100% the right move to go on.
Yes.
But now it means that the triple header we were going to have is now a double header. So like it feels like it's just like the season has just been kind of like lumbering along really slowly.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, I've been seeing a lot of people say this. I don't know if it's accurate or not. I don't know if maybe just the tracks haven't allowed it. I'm not sure. I've been seeing a lot of criticism that the changes that they made to the cars this year to assist with the porpoising has meant that the cars can't race as close together as they had been last season. I don't know what effect this is actually. I am in the camp of if this was done to protect the safety of the drivers and their long-term well-being, I think it was the right thing to do. But it's maybe this is like a combo of maybe the racing isn't as exciting, maybe the tracks that they've been on I actually think aren't the most exciting ones anyway so far, and it's taken us so long to get to what is going to be the 6th race of the season, where we're like 3 months in and we're into race 6.
Yeah. To me, I think it's got to be a mixture of a bunch of factors, right? I agree. I think the fact that they had to like raise the floor by like I think 15 millimeters or something like that is making a difference. I also think there's just the simple fact that this season is not as competitive as last year. I mean, you think back to 5-6 races in, Leclerc was still in the lead of the championship at that point.
The
right?
cars were much closer at this point. It really felt like it was a 3-horse race for the world championship potentially, right? Like that's kind of where we were at that point.
Yeah. And I think this year, it's clearly not. I mean, I think it's just the development war has just been won for this year by Red Bull. The other thing I think is worth talking about is that the cars, I mean, of course, there's the spirit of the regulations, which is to, enable better overtaking and better racing. But also, every team has a mandate to make the cars fast as possible. And you better believe that those two goals are at odds. You got to know that every time Red Bull get a little bit extra downforce or whatever, it's probably throw a little bit more dirty air. And the side sort of downside here is that I know last year people had kind of complained a little bit about how strong DRS was because there was no real historical data on what these cars would do. And so I think coming into 2023, the FIA have shortened a lot of these DRS zones, which I think has sort of exacerbated the problem. I think they sort of went in the wrong direction with the DRS just as the cars were becoming more difficult to sort of follow. So to me, it's a confluence of a bunch of things all together, which ultimately, I think if Ferrari were as fast as Red Bull, it probably wouldn't seem quite as bad as it is. But you've got races like Azerbaijan in which nothing really happened, and that was a track that has traditionally given us a lot of action. I think it's easy why people are kind of getting a little grumpy about it.
Yeah, it's a shame. Azerbaijan is one of my favorite races in the season. I just love the way it looks. Like I just think as a street circuit, it's a beautiful street circuit. That the one of my favorite corners in all of the entire calendar is the one where they go around that castle. And then you have the wild runoff area corner in Azerbaijan as well, where things always go bananas. This year, we were treated to the lone wheel of Yuki Tsunoda, right? Just like rolling along the track on its own. One of my favorite shots we've ever seen. Just like, we had no idea anything had happened. Camera cut, there's a wheel. Like, something's happened here. So I would say Azerbaijan had its moments, but it wasn't the overall good race that it could have been. So that's kind of where we are right now. I want to dig in now to every team, and we can talk about the performance of them and the drivers against each other. But we're going to welcome a new sponsor to the show. So are you ready to time me for our first pit stop of the season so far?
I am ready. I'm ready. My wheel guns have been fired up. I've got the Netflix sound effects that I'm going to throw in here. Yes.
All right, I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1.
This episode of the Backmarkers is brought to you by Bitdefender, a global leader in cybersecurity. In the world of Formula One racing, every millisecond counts, and cybersecurity is no different in stopping attacks. Just like a driver needs a helmet for protection, using a device without proper protection can lead to serious consequences. When it comes to protecting your digital life, you want the best security possible, and that's exactly what Bitdefender provides. Bitdefender is a company that's driven by a mission for top performance in technology and innovation, and they put their customer needs first and foremost. As a global leader in cybersecurity, Bitdefender is recognized time and time again for its commitment to excellence. They've been recognized for this. They've won numerous awards for their innovative solutions and dedication to customer satisfaction. Plus, they're trusted by millions of people around the world to keep their digital lives safe and secure, all while constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of cybersecurity. What sets Bitdefender apart is their focus on innovation and technology. They're always at the forefront of new developments in cybersecurity, working tirelessly to stay ahead of the latest threats. They use advanced machine learning algorithms to detect and block all kinds of threats in real time, and they provide multi-layered protection that keeps you safe from all kinds of online threats, including zero-day attacks. If you want to protect your digital life with the best security possible, trust Bitdefender. Their leadership in cybersecurity is underpinned by a desire to serve customer needs first and foremost. Head to bit.ly/discoverbitdefender to learn more about Bitdefender and find out about the best cybersecurity solution for you. That's bit.ly/discoverbitdefender. Go there right now. And thanks to Bitdefender for their support of this show and Relay FM.
Time 152.
Okay.
I gotta say, I am a huge fan of Bitdefender, and I've been friends with them for many years on the channels. I know you have as well. Man, they got the thesaurus out for that ad read. That was a tough one. That was like you came in, you had the double stack. Like they didn't make that one easy for you.
No, they didn't. And I will say this was bad preparing for me. It's the first time I've read that ad. Usually, as I started, I was like, oh no, I haven't read this one before. Usually I'll like go in and read it a couple of times, but I hadn't. So Bitdefender, appreciate you.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens next time. Man, I am excited for this season, man. So where do you want to start? Because there's a whole lot of drivers, a whole lot of teams to talk about.
I think we should go team by team. And I think to make this the most interesting it could be, we'll start with the bottom.
Okay.
Because if we start with talking about Sergio and Max, we might be there for a while. So we will start with Williams. So at Williams this year, we have the pairing of Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. How are you feeling about the two of them so far this year? Sargent is currently sitting in 19th. He's one of the 2 0-point scorers. Alex Albon, 1 point.
So it's weird. Going into it, obviously, Williams has this multiple year kind of reputation as being sort of the true backmarkers on the grid. I don't know how much that 1 point is really representative of how they've done this year. I actually think that they've been making some progress. I think that there have been some times, especially Alex has had some tremendous qualifying performances. Obviously, it's a lot more difficult to convert that, but I would say that they've got 1 point, but they've got 1 point because they really haven't been lucky. Like, even a little bit of something would have helped. And actually, same thing with Sargent. Like, honestly, like, I know that going into this season, he was not Williams' #1 pick. I think there's a lot of talk that Nick DeVries probably maybe would have grabbed that seat. Who knows? But it's like one of those things where, as someone who has a decent track record, but maybe not the sterling CV of some of the the true superstars like the Landos and the Georges and whatnot. I actually think that he's doing a very respectable job. Not flawless. I know he's had a couple issues here and there, but for a true rookie, honestly, I just think Williams, they deserve, I think, to be maybe a little higher. And it's just that they haven't had a whole lot of luck. It's just been like sort of that 1 point that Alex, hard fought for. But other than that, I will say that I'm seeing some glimmers of hope out of Williams. Maybe not to make a huge leap like Aston did, but at least to maybe claw themselves out of that sort of 10th place, maybe trying to start consistently getting some years in 8th place or maybe 7th place or something like there's signs of hope. How do you feel about them?
Yeah, I think that by the end of the season, Williams won't be lost. I don't think that. I think that they have shown. I think Alex Albon has been driving the hell out of that car, and he is having a better season than 1 point suggests. I think that his qualifying has been super good. He's had some bad luck. They've had some DNFs, I think, if my memory serves correctly. And I just think that Alex is doing really well. I've been really impressed with the team's communication. I don't follow every team on social media, but I do follow Williams. And I've been really enjoying like the new team principal, James Val's kind of the way he's talking about the team. And like he's being, I think, very honest and saying like, this track is good for us, this track is not good for us, And I think that the Williams is a fast car in a straight line. It looks good. And I will say, while he's sitting on 0 points right now, Logan Sargent, he has been the rookie I have been most impressed with so far this year. He has not performed the best, but he has outperformed my expectation way more. Like, I thought we were going to get a Mazepin with him, right? Because Sargent, unlike the other rookies we see, unlike a De Vries, unlike a Piastri, Sargent did not have that like glittering F2 career before coming to F1. Like we were talking about it at the end of last season. He just sneaked his way into his super license. And so I was thinking that, based on what we are told and what we see from other people, that like to be able to do this, you need that like You've got to have that driving pedigree behind you. You've got to have picked up a win in it. You look at like a Piastri, right? Where everyone's like, Piastri's going to be the second coming because he had he won this and he won that and he won this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Logan did not have that. So I've actually been really surprised with him. I think he's done a good job, and he seems like he is settling in so far the best he can. And I would love to see him pick up a point or two before the end of the year. But I think that my feeling on Williams clawing out of that bottom spot, I think sits on Albon.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Alex has clearly proven himself to be probably a better driver than that car. Really, you can get out of that. But that being said, how many times do we see George perform minor miracles with the older Williams, right? I think
And
it's
that's
like,
what I'm expecting from Albon. I'm expecting a
yeah,
George-like
agreed.
performance from him because,
Yeah.
George is a fantastic driver. We'll get to him later on. But Alex is really great. Like, he's a very, very good driver and has proven that on many occasions. I don't know how he stacks up against George Russell realistically, like today, but I know that he is more than close enough to where George is to where Logan is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like I expect
It's a
him
good benchmark.
to be able to, like he's the best person to sit in a Williams outside of George Russell in years, right? So
I agree. I totally agree.
I would like to start talking about AlphaTauri by
You mean my
talking.
boy Yuki?
No, no. I want to kind of go back to Drive to Survive.
Okay.
Nick DeVries set himself up real bad. He was on Drive to Survive, and then the whole lead up of the season, I'm not a rookie. That was his whole thing. I'm not a rookie. Oh, Nick DeVries. There are already rumors about, I don't know if I believe them, but it's the Sharks are circling around Nick DeVries, and we are 5 races in. He has done a combination of nothing to bad. But that has been his season so far. Like, he has either not gotten anything of note, or he has just absolutely destroyed the car. Like, there's kind of hasn't been a middle ground. And I feel for him because I had high hopes for him. Like, what my prediction was that a rookie will outperform, one of my predictions, right? A rookie will outperform his teammate. And I had my eyes on Nick DeVries for this. That was who I had my eyes on. And I hope that he's able to pull it together. But so far this season, he's been really disappointing. It's a shame.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously it's tough. I mean, from the outside, you can say this, that, and he's clearly quick, but he's quick in that kind of raw, like almost overdriving the car kind of thing. And I will say there's probably a little bit of it in that the AlphaTauri seems like it might just be the worst car on the grid this year. I mean, it just seems like it's not fast, it's difficult to drive. Even Franz tossed the AlphaTauri team principal. I mean, he laid into the engineers saying, "Oh yeah, they lied to me. They said the car was better. It's not." And it's like, whoa, like it's clear that there's a lot of pressure going on in that team. It's clear there's obviously some team principal changes coming to the team as well, assuming that they get all the Ferrari stuff sorted out. But I will say all of this is just solidifying in my mind, Yuki has got a future, man. I believe in the dude. He is actually made real, tangible, actual progress in his driving and almost more importantly in his sort of decision making, right? He's not putting his car in the dumb places that would get him in trouble like he did last year or the year before. He's not overdriving at the point where he's wiping out, obviously, not in every single race, but he's consistently pulled out. He's pulled out a couple of 10th place positions out of a car that really had no business being anywhere near there. And I think that if he was not stepped up in this kind of way, I don't think you would see the same kind of attention on Nick DeVries that you do now. But basically what we're seeing is a Yuki 2.0 doing everything he can and being a superstar, and a Nick DeVries who, like you said, came in with all the expectation in the world, all the confidence, and is finding that to not be warranted right now. And look, man, we know Red Bull. We know how they operate, maybe he won't get dropped mid-season, but I think it's pretty clear that if he does not massively step his game up, he certainly doesn't have a seat for next year. And I don't think it's unreasonable that if he continues the way he's doing right now, that mid-season break, they're gonna toss him. Like, I completely believe that. I mean, it's Red Bull we're talking about, right? Like, I mean, how many times have we seen this over and over and over again? If you're not performing, you are dropped and out of there.
And they got Danny Rick. They got him just hanging around.
They do.
Whether they would put him in, I don't know. But he's right there. He's right there, you know?
I'm sure happy to do it. I don't think it would be the right move to bring Danny Rick in. But hey, you know what? Who knows?
I don't think so either because he's clearly not their long-term prospect, right? He just isn't. I love Danny Rick, but he isn't. He's just there. Right? Like that seat in that car for as long as Red Bull want it around, right? There are all these rumors that they might be trying to offload AlphaTauri anyway, but for as long as they want AlphaTauri around, that seat is expected to bring them the person that they put in the Red Bull car, right? That will either replace Sergio or replace Max. He's been making these weird comments about retiring. Have you been hearing these?
You know what? Here's the thing about Max. I could see him pulling some weird Nico stuff. I could actually see Max just being like, yeah, I'm good. I'm done. Like, I know he has
and I understand it.
2 more years or something.
Yeah, like if you win like, 2 world championships, I mean, you don't have to break the records. Like, what? You know, you don't have to win 8 of them. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, there isn't really a reason for it. Once you've done it, realistically, the only way statistically is down, right? Like, once you win one, statistically, you will start to not win, right? Like, that's just how history dictates. Red Bull is clearly on a different path, right now, and he's gonna win another one, you would expect.
Of course.
But like, I would understand he wins this season, and maybe, you know, how long did you say he has on his contract?
So I believe he has this year plus 2. I don't know that for sure. I know he still has a couple of years on his contract left.
I could imagine it, but anyway, like, or maybe he's just like whatever. He doesn't know what he wants to do. But they're gonna have to put someone in Red Bull at some point. The AlphaTauri seat is like the perfect place to do it. It is the best experience possible. You are on the F1 grid. Like, this is a thing that they have that is kind of unique, right? I'm trying to, right? Because everybody else has links, but Red Bull actually own this team.
Own the team, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, friends tossed is just like, oh, I have to find my driver. Okay, like, I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. So, yeah, man, look, I'm excited for Yuki. And also, there's some rumors because obviously Yuki's seat has been funded in some or large part by Honda the whole time he's been there. There's been some talk that maybe Honda may want to have Yuki come across over to Aston Martin when they get that engine deal. I don't know exactly what the terms of that are or how much sway Honda really have. They're making a lot of noise like, oh, of course, you know, we think Yuki has so much potential, but it's ultimately Aston Martin's call, which sounds like PR speak for, hey, you want your engines this year? Kick Lance out of the car.
But then, see, this is the problem with Aston Martin. Let's jump ahead real quick and just talk about that one little thing, and we'll talk about actual current Aston Martin in a bit. That potential future of Aston Martin, right, is what they're saying is we want to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now what that's saying is our driver lineup is Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda. Love them both. That is not it.
Yeah,
that's not it.
That's not it. I agree.
Right? Like, if you want to win, realistically, what you need is a world champion. Like, that's what you need. Like, that will give you that jump, right? You already have one. Will he still be around in 2026? I don't know, right? Like, maybe, but I don't know. That's a long way off still.
It's a long way off. It's a long way off. Yeah. I think there's a shot that Fernando's still driving in 2026, but I don't think I would put money on it.
Right? Because I would see at that point, you know, maybe you would want a Charles Leclerc, right? Like in Aston Martin, right? Like, you know, maybe by that point he's picked up a world championship, but even if he hasn't, he's effectively world championship material, right? So, like, I feel like you'd be safe. Lando, right? Like someone like that. Yeah. I love Yuki, and maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe, you know, who knows what the next few years have got ahead of him. But I also still continue to question the Lance Stroll decision in the sense of, I think he's doing all right now. I do. My question is not the typical question that people have, which is like, should he be there? My question is, will he keep him? Because Lance Stroll is a businessman. At a certain point, with the amount of money he's putting in, if he can have 2 people in his car that will guarantee him a world championship, would he do it? How much does he love his son? I don't know.
Yeah, look, this is a question that only
one man can answer. There's only one man can answer this question. Yeah, and I genuinely don't know. I think at a certain point, he's going to make that decision, but I don't know how far away we are from it. Alfa
Yeah.
Romeo. For me, Alfa Romeo, the most forgettable team of the season so far. Like,
Yeah.
6 points, I don't know how they got them. Like, genuinely, I have no idea. Like,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I feel like we're not really seeing much of them. We've got Zhou Guan Yu on 2 points, Valtteri Bottas on 4 points.
I
They're
will
in a
say
bad spot, I think.
Valtteri is actually like worrying me a little bit here. Like there have been one, I think maybe 2 weekends where he just had no pace and no explanation for why. I think Zhou has clearly taken a step. You know, it's his second year. I think he's doing fine. Not particularly amazing, but he's doing fine. But yeah, it you got to imagine if you're Audi and you're sitting there, you know, with your master plan to have, you know, the full works Audi F1 team here in 2026, and you're looking at where this Sauber team is right now, and you've got to just be thinking like, what is this project? Like, how deep are we really gonna be? I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot of potential for Audi to unload a giant pile of money inside the cost cap as they can to try to revitalize this team, but it feels like they've had a couple of good weekends, as has Haas, that seem like maybe some kind of like, oh, this is good track for Ferraris or whatever the case is. But like outside of that, yeah, forgettable is I think a great way of putting it. I think if these guys were last in the championship right now, I don't think anyone would be surprised. I think
No.
they've just had a couple of sort of semi-lucky races or just a couple of races that the track really sort of suited the car.
I think
And other than that,
Zhou Guan Yu's put in some decent performances. I've been pleased with his racing this year. When I look at Alfa Romeo right now, I look at a team on autopilot. Like they know what their future is. Everybody knows what their future is, and probably nobody in any key position thinks that they're going to be there in 2026. The drivers, the team principal, everything, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
Audi's going to come in and they're going to clean house, right? You would expect. Like this is effectively they're buying their way into the grid, but like
Yeah.
you've got to like I assume a lot of the rank and file, a lot of the technical team will probably stick around. But like if you're Zhou Guan Yu, if you're Valtteri Bottas, do you think you're going to be there?
I mean, that's a great point. You probably not. I mean, obviously, we've got several more years to go. I mean, 2026 isn't that far away, but like,
It's far
it's
enough.
enough time that it's far enough that no one is guaranteed, or very few people on the grid are guaranteed, you know, 3 more years or whatever of racing. So, I'll be interested to see. I mean, I've got high hopes, but it's not a project that looks like it's going to shower itself with glory anytime soon. The way that Aston Martin has been sort of relentlessly step forward, whereas I think Audi are going to come in and they're going to have a little bit of a rude awakening for how exactly much work they really have to be remotely competitive. I mean, just look at Alpine, right? I mean, Alpine, you would think has been a works team for a number of years, has had all the advantages that you would think that they have and that should be working, and yet they're showing up to every race, getting pointed to here, there, and that's it, right? And I think it's easy to imagine Audi living in a similar kind of world of, unless they have some kind of magic bullet or their power units, you know, way better than everyone else. So there's something that's kind of pulled them forward. This team is not looking impressive right now.
No, and it's really interesting looking at the 2 years, right? This season, last season. I feel like Alfa Romeo from the beginning of last season to now have had the biggest fall.
Yeah.
Like you were all in on Alpha, like thinking they're gonna win the whole championship at one point, if I remember rightly. You were like Bottas to the moon.
Yep. I think I said that. Yeah, I did think I said that Bottas, world champ, beating Max Verstappen in 2020.
I'm pretty sure you said
I'm
that.
pretty sure I said
You
that.
were excited about them though, and lots of people were because they were looking really tasty at the beginning of last season, and it feels like they have had the harshest decline down to where they are now.
Well, I think part of that has been that now we know that AlphaTauri were one of, if not the only team that were actually at the weight limit last year. Everyone else was overweight. So as the year went on, AlphaTauri didn't really like they basically kind of stood still in a lot of ways. Whereas
Do you mean Alfa Romeo or AlphaTauri? Which one do you mean?
Sorry, Alfa Romeo. Thank you very much. Yeah, Alfa Romeo. Yeah, so they were they were at the minimum weight, whereas all the other teams had 5, 10, 15 kilos of extra weight they were hauling around. And throughout the year, they were able to develop their way out of having to carry that extra weight, which naturally just gave them performance everywhere, right? And weight's the enemy of literally everything that's fast. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think part of it is just they designed a really lightweight car last year, which flattered them. And when everyone caught up, it sort of showed, what's that phrase? Like, you only see who's skinny dipping when the tide goes out or whatever. It's like you never know until
They were naked the whole time. We had no idea.
they were the
We'll
whole
talk
time.
about your boys. We'll go over to the US of A. Haas. 8
Yeah,
points, 7th in the championship.
good for them. Good
Yeah.
for them. I would say right now the bottom 4 teams are all almost interchangeable to me as far as performances. I think Haas has probably on the whole had the fastest of this sort of group of cars, but it also has, I mean, some great qualifying performances, but I just think that we're still so early and there's still been so many times where they've just gone absolutely nowhere in the races that we're going to see maybe like by the summer break a little bit of a better, like clear competitive picture because while I think Haas are looking all right now, my gut is that they're maybe being slightly flattered by some luck, by some terrific performances by Nico, which, I mean, shout out to Nico for coming back. And, he had those super sub
He's in
for,
P11 right now,
yeah,
Nico Hulkenberg, with 6
6 points.
points.
Yep. Yep. Tied with Ocon, who obviously has a significantly faster car. But I mean, we'll talk about Alpine in a second. Yeah, no, not a lot to say besides I'm happy to see Haas not. They've had a rough few years where they were kind of scrapping it out with Williams at the very, very bottom of the grid. And it seems like they're making progress. They're doing decently. And the driver lineup has clearly been improved. I think a lot of people were a little upset that they had dropped Mick last year. And I think that Nico has, without a shadow of a doubt, proven that that was the correct call.
Yep. It is an interesting strategy that they've taken. Haas have a real copy-paste mentality as a team, right? Like,
Yeah.
they take parts as much as they can. They replicate design as much as they can, right? And now it's like, oh, Magnussen worked. Let's just find another one like him. And it has worked out for them so far, and I think will this season. But I don't know if this is a long-term solution to the Haas situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of feel like Haas sort of live, meal to meal, race to race, season to season. I don't see a grand ambition. I mean, when's the last time you saw them say, "Oh, we want to be fifth or whatever"? Like, I think they just are like, "Oh, we survived another year. Oh, Gene didn't kill the team.
Gene's happy. I'll call
Cool.
Gene, and Gene's happy.
I'll call Gene. Gene's like, good job, boys," and then Gunther's got a job for another year. Like, it just seems like they don't have a lot of ambition, but honestly, if their ambition is to survive as a race outfit, that's still a really hard thing to do.
Yep, they are, and they're doing it. Alpine Renault, 14 points. They are 6th in the standings. And we have Esteban Ocon is in 12th with 6 points, and Pierre Gasly is in 10th with 8 points.
This is not right. Alpine have had the worst season so far, in my opinion. Like, the fact that they are level on points with McLaren. McLaren have an awful car that is really, really, really slow. And Alpine have had, they had the incident where the two drivers sort of took each other out. They've had bad pit
They would have got
stops.
a serious points haul in that race as well if that wouldn't have happened.
Unbelievable. The only reason that's the only reason why McLaren do have the points that they do is I think they had one lucky race where they scored almost all their points and they're like 4th and 6th or something or whatever it was. But yeah, just underperforming massively. They've got their all French team, they've got their all French lineup. It's like you've got the story there, and the excuses have got to be gone. Like, I mean, and you saw, that their team principal, the CEO of Alpine was just laying into the team of like, it's not acceptable, and it's like the pressure has to be a massive where they have a fast car, or at least, compared to where they are. Like, they should be 5th place by a long shot. I understand they're not going to be able to be in 4th. I'll ask them to take that step. But like, if you're in the Alpine team right now, that's not a happy place. Like, I think they need, to be fair, it's a long season. I think they will get lucky. I think they will have some sort of catch ups and whatnot. But like, man, it's looking rough.
Yeah, they've had one of the worst starts compared to where they should be, right? Because we'll talk about McLaren now, 5th place on 14 points, so they're tied on points. And we have, where are we? So we have Oscar Piastri at 14th with 4 points, and we have Lando Norris in 9th with 10 points. But the whole story around McLaren is that their car is trash, right?
Yeah.
Like it's effectively, it's a mean word to use, but everyone is just talking about how terrible their car is from top to bottom. They're one of the teams where Zach Brown wrote a public letter to the fans, like, this is bad. Sorry, it's so bad. I don't understand what's happened here, realistically. Do they know? Do you think?
No.
And it's like another one of these, like, had a good season. Like, Lando was making it happen last year, and something happened to their car over the break, and they missed out, and now there are lots of teams with mixed up situations right now, and McLaren are not one of the teams that seem to be suggesting that they have improvements coming that are going to make the car a lot better. Like, I remember, I think it was either the last race or the one before, they had an improvements package, and in the pre-race, they were asking Lando, oh, you got the improvements, you expecting him to make the car better? And he was like, no. Right? The improvements that they have are kind of seem to be like Band-Aids. They're not anything that's going to give them the performance they're looking for. That car seems like a nightmare to drive. And it is wild, you look at... I would say what I was saying before, because I was going to move on to Ferrari there sooner than we should have. Oscar Piastri has surprised me.
Yeah.
He's done well.
Yeah. He's done. I mean, obviously with all the contractual drama last year around him, I mean, he had to do well, and I think he has. I think it's the story of McLaren is really they've got two good and excellent drivers, in my opinion. So to tell the story of the season, right? So they are tied with Alpine for 5th in the championship at 14 points. But out of that 14 points, they scored 12 of them in Australia. Like, one race was almost their entire points haul. Imagine if they had a race like Alpine in that race. They would be in, like, probably 9th, maybe 8th at this point. And I think they kind of deserve to be down there, right? Like,
and that might tell the
McLaren...
story of the rest of the season, Austin. Like, maybe that's where we see them by the end of the season. They don't have this kind of luck again.
It's just, again, it's easy on the outside to, point and go, oh, make your car faster. But, like, there are real issues with this McLaren team, like, I mean, they obviously, I think, all have the memories of glory, with, back when they had Lewis and, all the terrific races they used to have. But it's been a long time since they've been truly competitive. I think there was a little bit of a false dawn over the last, especially at the end of the last era before we got these ground effects cars where, we saw Daniel win a race. We saw Lando should have won a race. Like, they were pretty routinely the best of the rest, right? And up there and able to sort of mix it up. But I think there's some problems. I know that they've just changed a lot of their management structure and whatnot, but like McLaren is a team that if you are a McLaren fan, I would like to send my condolences because I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit of a rough period. Like, it's rough right now, and there's not like, I know there's all this talk about their new facilities and the wind tunnel and blah, 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 and I'm sure that will help, but there are no silver bullets in this, right? Like, it's like sort of, you can slide down pretty easy if you make a bad decision, but it's difficult to make that ground up unless you are someone like Aston Martin, who have clearly found a design and have absolutely optimized it. But it's tough to see McLaren making that kind of step. It just seems like they're maybe off for a little bit more time in the wilderness.
I'm worried about them, and I feel so bad for Lando because he deserves better than this. Lando Norris deserves better than this, and he has hitched his cart to that horse. Looks like 5-year deal. He should be at Red Bull, right? Like, he should be at Ferrari. That's where he deserves to be, and he is stuck there now. And I really hope that something can happen for Lando Norris and he can break out of McLaren because he deserves better.
Yeah, and I've heard the rumor is that a lot of times when these drivers are signing, especially the really, sought after drivers are signing these longer term contracts, they typically have a break clause, right? So like Max, I'm sure if Red Bull doesn't finish in the top 2 in the constructors, whatever can dip, or whatever the case is. Supposedly Lando has nothing. He is there.
Oh, that's not what I hoped you were going to say. I was hoping for some good news there. Lando, somebody needs to get Lando's manager on the phone because we need to have a serious conversation about that.
I get it. It's tempting to be sort of part of a long term of a team. You want to be
And
like the McLaren guy,
when
but
he
like
signed that deal, they were on the rise. You know, that they were
they were,
having
yeah,
not an Aston-like rise, but it felt close to that of like, ooh, here we go, right? Like they're on the move, and then something's happened, and yeah,
yeah,
that is very
oof,
disappointing to hear. So then
yeah.
we jump up to Ferrari in fourth place. We go from McLaren's 14 points to Ferrari's 78 points. Is a huge, huge difference right now. And in
Yeah,
Ferrari, we have Charles Leclerc at seventh place with 34 points, and Carlos Sainz at fifth with 44 points. 10 points difference between them at this stage is quite significant, I think.
it is. Leclerc has had a rougher season so far. I think he's lost some points. He's had some issues. I think on the whole of it, he has definitely been the stronger Ferrari driver. I think Carlos has struggled a few times in the races, not really been able to make up a lot. And I think that, Leclerc obviously had a terrific weekend in Azerbaijan, a pole in the sprint and a pole for qualifying. I mean, that's a track that he's got history at, but he's incredibly, incredibly fast. But so, Mike, there's a lot to talk about Ferrari, and that they seem like they are maybe in some trouble just with how many people are leaving from the technical side and the upper management. But can we talk about the whole Lewis and Ferrari thing? Because to
This is
me,
stupid.
that feels like it's the biggest smokescreen of Ferrari's having a bad season.
Yeah.
They thought they could compete last year. They should have. I mean, if they were able to keep up, they really could have competed last year, but they obviously fell off. This year, they started off and they're farther from the front. They've been leapfrogged by Aston. They're bleeding main personnel, all the people who are kind of being part of the old Matteo Binotto reign are sort of slowly looking for the exit and trying to find escape hatches. To me, this rumor that supposedly they've hit Lewis Hamilton with, I believe it was a $40 million contract for next year or something like that. It just seems like a smokescreen. It just seems like they're
Yeah.
trying to distract from their chronic underperformance.
I think they're trying to show. So there was actually just before we got on the call today, Lewis was asked about this in the press conference, and his response
Ooh,
was
what did he say?
basically the deal with Mercedes is pretty much done. So
Good
like
answer.
his thing was like, my team's working on it. I don't work on the deals anymore. That was a distraction. And he said my team and Toto were very close to getting a deal done, and like that's where his focus is on the race, but he wants to get that deal done. And that's all it is. And maybe his team is now using this as leverage with Mercedes, but there is
Yeah.
I would be flabbergasted if he took that deal. There is zero reason to take that deal. It doesn't make any sense at all.
No sense.
Right? Like
No sense.
Mercedes are struggling, but they're still beating Ferrari right now, and I think they probably
Yep.
will beat Ferrari. The hope is that they're aware of their situation now, Mercedes. They are maybe talking the most plainly out of any of the teams of like, no, we messed up,
Yeah.
and we know how we've messed up. Well, we know.
Yeah.
I don't think they necessarily know how to unmess up, but they know that their concept was bad, right? And so they know now,
Yeah.
don't do another one of these next year. And so your hope is that over the next few years, they will rise up again and it makes sense. I kind of feel like Ferrari's done that. Like 2020 Ferrari was a disaster, right? And then
Yep.
2021 wasn't great. 2022, 2023 Ferrari, significantly better, but not to the level, right? Like
Yeah.
Ferraris sometimes seems like their biggest issue is getting in their own way. This is like
Yeah.
during the race weekend, and this is a problem Mercedes have zero of, right? Like the issue that Mercedes has is mechanical right now, right? They do not have race strategy problems, and if anything, Mercedes 96 points is their race strategy because they have a much worse car than Ferrari. They should not be
Yeah.
beating Ferrari right now. But it comes
Yeah.
down to driver performance and strategy for Mercedes.
Yeah.
So I don't think
I think
Lewis Hamilton's
Ferrari-
going to Ferrari. No way.
No, that story just made no sense to me at all. Like, I get it. Obviously, there are all the stories that Senna famously wanted to drive for Ferrari at some point in his career. And, you can see some sort of analogies to, maybe like Michael Schumacher's career where, he won the championships at Benetton. He moved to Ferrari. He retired. Then he came back. but didn't exactly cover himself with glory when he came back with Mercedes. You can imagine like Lewis being like, oh, you know what? I'm the 7-time champ. If I really care, I'm going to show everyone that I can win, not at just McLaren, not at just Mercedes, but at a team like Ferrari, and commit several years to try to fix that team. Because I'm sure if Lewis was tempted by that idea, he could probably make some stuff happen at Ferrari. I think he could probably help clean that team up, kind of give them a little bit of a backbone, galvanize the team around him. I don't think at this point in his career he cares. I don't think he wants it. If this is one of those things where it was his childhood dream to always drive for Ferrari, and they're gonna give him a giant pile of money and let him kind of have his way with the team, sure. But like, why would you do that?
That
Why
dream's
not just hang
gone.
out with Mercedes for a couple years?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, has Lewis ever talked about he loves Ferrari? Like, I
No.
just don't think there's that sort of irrational, passionate, like, oh, Ferrari F1, we've got to do it kind of thing in Lewis's head that some other drivers have had over the years.
My read, I don't know Lewis Hamilton, right? Neither of us do. But my read and what my expectation would be for him is he is with Mercedes until he retires. And when he's retired, he's retired. Like,
I agree.
I don't think he's going anywhere for a number of years now. I just don't see that happening because he's still got the stuff, right? Like he has.
Yeah.
And so there's zero reason for him to go anywhere. He wants that one more win. He may as well stick around with Mercedes for a couple of years to try and get it. If that doesn't happen and he still wants one more season in him in 2026 or 2027, maybe jump over to whoever's top, because whoever's top will take him, right? If you've got a seat and Lewis Hamilton comes to your door, you will put Lewis Hamilton in that seat. You will get rid of anyone, right? Like, why wouldn't you? Like, because then if you believe you have the car to win a world championship, you have the opportunity to put the guy in the car to beat the all-time record, right?
Here's the thing. It's just, to me, Lewis is so synonymous with Mercedes at this point that I think his retirement is going to look like, he's going to be an ambassador for Mercedes forever. He's probably going to, help work on the team.
He'll do the Niki Lauda thing, right?
Exactly. Like, he's going to do what he wants to do, and he will have earned that, right? So, yeah, I just think this feels like it was a giant smokescreen by Ferrari so that they would have something positive to say versus just the nonstop beratement of everyone that Ferrari sucks. It did make sense. But Mercedes, I will say, while they're doing well, I think just like the story last year, their results and their points and what they've been able to accomplish is above what I think they really kind of deserve. I think they've really kind of made their own luck and sort of, like you said, they kind of forced it through with two excellent drivers, some excellently well-run team, some luck, but largely just like everything has kind of gone Mercedes' way this year. Like, kind of.
Russell had a DNF, right?
I believe, I think he actually had, it was Russell or was it Lewis? I think it was Russell who had an actual, like, an engine failure.
Yeah, he had an engine
It was
failure.
the first time that happened. Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the reasons that because I think Russell's having a better season again, but he is at 6th with 40 points and Lewis is at 4th with 56. I don't think that's telling the exact story of Mercedes this year, but as you rightly point out, Mercedes are not telling the story that anything makes sense. But I think, you know me, everyone knows me by now, number one fan, Mercedes, and this is like, it's great. I love this moment right now because I get to prove the fact that I'm not just like fan of the number one team, right? But like, I think that they are proving what they are as a team in being able to produce any of the results that they're able to produce right now.
Yeah.
They should not be where they are. They should not be third. I mean, and they should not be third 6 points away from Aston Martin.
Yeah, that is legitimately crazy.
Right?
Like, that is legitimately crazy.
But they are managing that, and the way that Mercedes manage that is they have two drivers that bring it home by and large, week after week, right? We've had some DNFs this year, which is a surprise for them. But that is what sets them apart. I think that they have the closest pairing in skill and ability in the car that they're in. And that means that they're able to just bring home those mid to high results week after week. Basically exactly what they did last season they're repeating it this season. But the problem they have right now is Fernando Alonso. That's the problem they have right now.
Yes. And can we talk about Aston, please?
Yeah, this is super interesting. So Aston Martin, second with 102 points. They are 6 ahead of Mercedes. 122 points away from Red Bull, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And we have Fernando Alonso at third place, 75 points. And then we have Lance Stroll with 27 points in eighth place. I would say Lance Stroll, doing good. We'll talk about Fernando in a minute. I think Lance is doing good. Lance is doing good. He's not doing great. He's not doing bad. Lance Stroll, I think, at the moment is exceeding the expectations that people have for Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
And I've always said this about Lance Stroll. I think Stroll is a better driver than people expect him to be.
I think he's showing himself to be okay, and he's getting demolished by his teammate, right? I mean, Fernando has been...
But I think that's a better result than people think of him. People think that Lance Stroll is only there because of his dad, right? Which that's the reason he is there, but I don't think it's the only reason. I think he is better than other people we see in that position.
I guess he's out of the top 4 teams this year. He is the lowest point scoring driver. He's got a third the points of his teammate.
Yep. But again, that's all bad.
Yuki almost beat him.
But that's better than people think. All right, like you compare him to Mazepin. We compare him to
Mick.
Not Mick. I'm thinking like who's put for money? Who's put in purely for money? What was the guy's name? He's gone out of my head. He was at Williams forever, and we wanted him gone, and now I've completely forgotten about him.
Latifi. Latifi himself.
So that's who I put Stroll against, right? Because Stroll is in his position because his dad owns the team. And I'm just saying, like, he performs better, I think, than other people in the position that he's in. That's all I'm saying. Does he deserve to be against Fernando Alonso? No. You should have Lando Norris in there. You should have Pierre Gasly in there, right? That's who should be alongside him. Of like, who's someone that can learn from Fernando. But Lance is outperforming, I think, people's expectations of him. But the delta is showing, could they be really nipping at the heels of Red Bull if they had someone who was in 4th place? Yes, right? That's the reason that there is that 100-point difference between them.
Yeah, I just look at it so last time out, Fernando, 3rd place. Lance ended up the race 40 seconds behind Fernando, in 12th place behind Yuki, and what we've already established is probably the worst car on the grid. It's tough for me to justify much, but look, let's not talk down about Lance anymore. Like, whatever. I think my feelings are clear about this.
We've both made our points. We've both made our points.
Yes, exactly. Let's sing the praises of Alpine, the myth, the legend, Fernando Alonso. Man, how nice
is this happening?
It's so good.
I don't understand how this is happening. How is this happening?
He's a damn metronome in the car. He's like third, fourth, third, fourth. It's great.
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like it defies the logic that I expected of this sport, right?
Yeah. The consistency. The car is clearly good. I do think there's a argument to be said that the car is probably the 2nd fastest car on the grid. I think it's pretty clear that I think he is. But also, he is putting in these unbelievably consistent race performances and just raking in the podiums. Mind you, I think when it's really going to break open is either we're going to have some kind of wacky qualifying in like Monaco or a street circuit, or, I don't know, Max and Checo are going to take each other out or some nonsense like that. I mean, that I do think has to happen for Fernando to win a race this year.
I think it might happen
this
weekend.
Races out there.
I think Monaco's his best shot. Because all he's got to do is get in front of them, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done, but it is certainly possible, as we saw last year. Anything can happen. Just very little to say besides I'm thrilled with Fernando. I'm thrilled that he is absolutely crushing it. He seems happy.
Yep.
He seems like he is himself in
The
such
best
a
teammate in the
great way.
world. It's like, how's
Yeah.
Lance doing? I love him. How is he? Tell Lance he was a good overtake. Like, it's very funny.
Wow. I saw it on the TV screen, man. Good job.
It's
He's
very
loving
funny
it.
to me. It's
He's
very
loving
funny.
it. There's all the
I,
Taylor Swift stuff, which was great too.
that
Like just
was
everything
exhausting.
about Fernando is amazing.
It's the best thing of the season, right? Like, it's the best part of the season.
Yeah.
I don't understand how I just don't understand how it's happening. Like, it doesn't make sense, and I just am floored by it. Like, this isn't the way things go. Like, I don't know why Aston Martin have turned out the car that they've turned out all of a sudden, right? Compared to last year, it doesn't make any sense. Like, how in just over the summer or over the winter break, they were able to turn out the second fastest car on the track when they were nowhere last year. And it doesn't make sense to me how a returning, previously retired world champion can go to a second team post-retirement and be in the position he's in. Like, that doesn't make any sense because, like, what I have experienced is what happened to Seb when he, goes to his... Like, he wasn't even coming back from retirement. He's just like, I've moved... Oh, look what happened to Valtteri, right now. Like, that's what I'm used to. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's incredible.
The only thing I can say is that it is a team with a lot of investment, a lot of smart people on board. And one of the things that they did do smart, which someone like Mercedes or Ferrari didn't, is that they accurately realized the car concept was wrong early last year, abandoned it, immediately started working on a much more Red Bull style concept. So by the time they've come around to this year, they've got a lot more development done. They've kind of gone a lot farther down the sort of the fruitful sort of rabbit holes that they can find, performance with. And there's also the advantage that because they did so bad last year, they have significantly more CFD time and wind tunnel time than the other big teams. So they're able to extend that lead.
That's good.
The system, that sliding scale system for giving, the lower performing teams more time and the higher performing teams less time was not designed for a team to go from 7th or 8th to 2nd in the championship in, a few months time. Like, I think that's probably giving them a little bit of an artificial boost. With that being said, they are quickly making all the right decisions with getting the Works Honda deal, which I think is going to be tremendously important for them. They're basically doing all the things. They're in the middle of moving into a brand new factory as we speak right now. Like, everything that could go right with the team is going right with the team right now. I don't think it's going to last forever. I do think that, part of the reason why they've been flattered so much is because Red Bull have done so well, and honestly, Ferrari and Mercedes have kind of dropped the ball, which I think makes them look a little bit better in sort of context. But that being said, you could have said last year McLaren was going to make the big step. You could have said that Alpine were going to make the big step, or Aston. But only one of those three teams actually made the step, and it was very, very obviously Aston who have completely deserved it.
That is a very good assessment. And I would say the only thing I'd add to it is they did not have the arrogance that Mercedes did, for example. Right? Where Mercedes were like, no, we just needed one more year, right? For our concept. We're going to get it. We just need to tweak it a little bit and we're going to get it right. And they got it even more wrong.
Have you seen the numbers in the wind tunnel? This car is so fast. Don't worry about how fast it is. Actually, the numbers, follow the numbers. It's like, well,
something happened, and we don't know fully what happened, but it happened. And like Aston Martin were willing to make big changes where Mercedes weren't at the right time. Now they're willing to make those changes, and it's too late for this year. Where if Mercedes would have made the changes that they're about to make last year, then maybe we would be looking at a way different lineup now. We don't know that, right? But they weren't willing to do it, and so they kind of played themselves.
And here's the thing. So I don't know if you've seen the photos just this morning, that we've seen a little bit. And you can see that they've clearly gone for a little bit more of like a Red Bull style of car, or really what everyone else has done. But you look at that beside the Aston Martin, and the Aston it looks like it's like a 3-generation newer device or newer car. It's like the Mercedes looks like it's like, oh, they just kind of bolted this thing on and they're like, this is version 1. Where, Aston Martin have taken the time and they've sort of committed to that sort of development rabbit hole, and they've found a ton of performance in it, right? So it's just, I don't think Mercedes is going to be particularly fast this weekend, but also I don't think we're really going to see a super fast Mercedes this year.
No, we
realistically.
won't.
I think
No.
they need to start working down this, but use it as next year as the jumping off point. But once you
I
fall
think by the
behind,
end
if
of the
someone's got
season, they will be fighting closer with Aston Martin, I think.
maybe,
No, I mean, I'm not
maybe, I
saying
don't
that
know.
they're going to be like fighting it out. I'm just like closer, right? Because there is a big difference between those two cars right now, and I could imagine them
Yeah.
getting closer. Like, because I was reading today on the F1 website, they had a good breakdown of like what was going on with the Mercedes that we've seen so far, and it's like they're actually closer in design to Ferrari because they can't do the Red Bull style because the car won't fit the side pod. Like, it won't work because the
Yeah.
body and the way that they have distributed the shape of the car in general for their concept means they could not do what Red Bull and Aston have done. So, like, none of that can happen until next year. But I just feel like if what they're seeing is seeing a difference, that's why I think that they would get closer because, I mean, they're already right behind them, so, like, in
Yeah.
the standings. So I could imagine more fighting between those teams, between Aston and Mercedes, if Mercedes can take a leap. But we'll have to wait and see. Let's finish it out by talking about the obvious winner, Red Bull, 224 points. They look absolutely unbeatable. We have Max Verstappen at 119 points. But the thing I find most interesting is Sergio Perez at 105.
Yeah.
All I want in the world now is what Red Bull can give me, which is I want a championship fight this year. I want it. Just give me it between them. That's what I want.
Yeah, I would love to see that too. Look, I got all the faith in the world in my boy Checo. I don't think he can sustain a challenge against Max.
You're probably right. I think you're right. I'm just saying I want, the closest that
see it.
we're going to get for a championship battle exists within Red Bull.
Yeah.
And I think some of the drama of the season will be if Red Bull will allow it. Like, that's going to be the really interesting thing, right? Like, so far, it's been fine. There hasn't been any drama, and everyone seems to be okay with each other. I would just state for the record, a new low feeling about Max Verstappen after the way...
Oh, another one.
Well, it's the whole thing with George. Was it in Azerbaijan?
Yeah. Yep.
I just think there are
Look, man.
certain ways to conduct yourself, and that was
it's
not the
fine.
way.
I feel like we're clearly not massive Max fans. I think as everyone who's watching or listening knows. I think there was a clip I saw on stream of Max who his DRS wasn't working. I forget, was it in Australia? I don't remember, but it was not working. So Red Bull gave him the actual DRS actuator, but it was in like a aluminum Red Bull can. So they basically made like the sculpture, and it's like, oh, good luck with DRS next time or whatever. And I saw that and I'm like, this is cute, and I'm sure that Max thought it was hilarious, and it's all good, things happen. But it feels like the kind of gift you get for a really spoiled rich child who their birthday party was ruined, so you go out and have some master craftsman design them some insanely complicated overwrought thing just to make them feel better. I saw it, and I just Max haha, look at this neat thing, it's really cool, as he sets it down. They still his World Drivers Cup trophy on his computer as he's sim racing. It's just look, man, I'm happy for you, but it felt like that sort of rich kid gift that just man, that Red Bull are out there just trying, just hey, Max is making us so much money, he's doing so good, keep him happy at all costs.
Yeah, it's just the whole thing. The whole thing with George, what was frustrating to me was of course, if you just give it one more lap, Max, you would take him. I don't understand why he drives in such a way which is so aggressive at all times. That's what I find peculiar.
He's gotten a little bit better this year. He's gotten a little bit.
He has, but that particular one was just it was just a weird thing to me. But whatever. I just didn't like the way that the whole thing went down, and it was just another of those situations, like with the Checo thing where he last season where he wouldn't observe the team orders. It kind of just showed to me it's an enforcement of what I believe him to be. Anyway, but what I'll say is it is undeniable how good he is, right? Like,
Of course.
it's and I stand by what I said last time. Like, I'm happy that he's got that second world championship, which is an
Yeah.
undeniable world championship, and he'll pick up a
Yep.
third. But what I
Yep.
would love to see is Sergio Perez pick it up. That's what I want, and it's just going to be very interesting to see if and how the season progresses. I think that Sergio is picking up. Max kind of can't. Like, there is no further for him
Yeah.
to excel.
Yeah.
He is operating perfectly. The only thing that can change for Max Verstappen is the mind games. And I'm sure right now he does not like that Sergio is 14 points behind him. Like,
Yeah.
that is a now currently race to race difference, right? Like,
Yeah. It is.
whoever's first and second right now is going to, they're going to flip flop around. And
Yeah. Very close.
going into Monaco wasn't great for him last. Like, there are things like that where I'm like, what is his mental game like?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, because I feel like he doesn't deal very well with these kinds of things. Like, him and Lewis in 21 wasn't great. Like, I think Max was very upset, and I think drove upset a lot, right? And he ended up edging it out, and then this past year has no challenge. And I wonder what a Verstappen Perez challenge is like, and I hope it's something we see. Realistically, though, I don't expect it to happen, but I would love it if it did.
I'm sure we will see fireworks. We may not see that sustained title challenge throughout the year. I'm sure we will see fireworks, whether Monaco stuff gets spicy or whatever it is. We've still got a lot of races to go. But
Sure do.
it's an interesting season, man. I will say, like, it's not my favorite season. I think we've been spoiled over the last few years with some of the stuff. Like, I think 2021 is and will remain to be one of my favorite seasons of all time. Like,
It's probably the
absolutely
best season of
unreal.
all time, right? That's what everybody says. It's like
Gotta be.
it's up
It's
there.
got to be. It was completely classic. Last year was still good because we had the brand new cars. We had Ferrari, Ascendant, and then Descendant, and we had Red Bull, obviously, eventually sort of sweeping it. Now I think we're settling into a little bit more of a quote unquote normal season like we had for all those years with Mercedes dominance, where it's like, oh, if you want to have a good time, ignore the top two guys and focus on the rest of the field. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing this year.
Yep.
That being said, though, thank goodness for Fernando Alonso and Aston
Yep.
for spicing up 2023, so it's not an actual snooze fest.
I just look forward to the season actually getting started. I just don't think it's gotten started.
Yeah.
There just hasn't been a consistency. We had like race 1, 2 weeks to race 2, 2 weeks to race 3, then like an entire month to race 4, and then a week to race 5, and now it's 2 weeks to race 6. So like we've been like. So I'll be happy when the races actually begin, and then before we know it, we're at summer break. So who knows?
Yeah, no kidding, man. It's like they come quick.
Yeah. But we will be back later on in the season for more reviews of how things are going. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Backmarkers. Until then, say goodbye, Austin Evans.
Goodbye, my friends, and until the next time that Mike conveniently parks his car at the exit of the corner before I go into the tunnel and ruins my qualifying and I get really grumpy about it. Goodbye. That's pretty